Tonight we are on the record with the hottest issue on the primary ballot, the marriage amendment.
It's time to go on the record with WRAL News.
Good evening. It has been a while since a campaign was so passionate and at times confusing. A proposed constitutional amendment, often called the Marriage Amendment, Amendment 1, the vote to ban gay marriage, etc. Only 55 words, yet those words have created angst and sometimes anger. Here they are. Marriage between one man and one woman is the only domestic legal union that shall be valid or recognized in this state. This section does not prohibit a private party from entering into contracts with another private party, nor does this section prohibit courts from adjudicating the rights of private parties pursuant to such contracts. Those 55 words assure a 1996 law passed by the General Assembly could not be nullified. In 1996, it took only 25 words. Marriages, whether created by common law, contracted, or performed outside North Carolina, between individuals of the same gender are not valid in North Carolina. So tonight, we're going to talk about this with people for and against the amendment, and later with legal minds who have different views of the potential harm this amendment could cause. With us right now, the Reverend Nancy Petty from the group People of Faith Against Amendment 1, and Cammie Mueller, Communications Director for Vote for Marriage NC. Also with us, WRAL's Capitol Bureau Chief Laura Leslie, who has been covering this story since its inception. We'll start with you, Laura.
Could you talk a little bit, each of you, about sort of, for the folks who are maybe just sort of paying attention to this now because Election Day is coming up on Tuesday, in a nutshell, in a sentence or two, what is your argument for and against your particular side?
Sure. Well, this amendment does one thing and one thing only, and it defines marriage as a union between one man and one woman. And I think we're seeing in the ad wars and confusion that is blanketing the media sphere in North Carolina that this may do other things. And as you saw in the second sentence of the actual amendment wording, it's simply not the case.
We should clarify, though, that it also bans civil unions and
Yes.
domestic partnerships.
Sure.
So it does a little bit more than just the marriage.
Well, no, in defining marriage as between a man and a woman, that's the qualifier. Nothing else would apply.
Okay.
So, sure.
My reasoning for fighting against this amendment is that it brings harm to all citizens of North Carolina. It not only affects the rights of gay people, but it affects the rights of children, of heterosexual couples on many different levels. And so this amendment will do great harm to all of the people of North Carolina. And so it seems necessary for us to speak out against it and try to educate people on exactly what this amendment is about, that it's not just about gay marriage. It's a much broader amendment that, in actuality, we don't know what all the implications are for it right yet, because we don't know how the courts would interpret this language. But what we do know is that this amendment brings harm to all the people of North Carolina, not just some of the people.
Ms. Mueller, a couple of months ago, we were having a similar discussion here, and there was a pastor sitting in the chair where you are now who is for this amendment, and he was very eloquent in what he had to say. But I pushed a little bit on the fact that it could, and underscore the word could, cause harm to children, different people. And I said, is it worth the risk? And he said, yes. I ask you the same question. Is it worth the risk to alter and amend the Constitution?
Is it worth the risk to protect marriage as a union between one man and one woman?
Is it worth the risk that it could cause harm to children?
Well, I think that is an invalid claim, sadly. Marriage has been the union between one man and one woman since the dawn of time, and government has an invested interest in preserving that union because it solidifies the foundational nature in which our country was built upon.
I want to go back to the
Sure.
question
well,
about
children. Well, I would love to answer it if you would let me.
Okay, and I don't mean to be rude and interrupt,
No,
but specifically, if there's a potential to cause harm to a child, is it worth it? Is it worth that risk?
Well, I think what I'm saying is I think that it's an invalid question. This will not cause harm to children.
Ms. Petty, you agree? Disagree?
I would disagree on that.
How do you feel like it would cause harm to children?
I think we don't fully know, but we do have enough information to know that this amendment would turn upside down the domestic violence laws of our state. We know that in some cases, not in all, but in some cases, children's health care would be affected by this amendment. We know that when children are of divorced families, that visitation rights would be affected in some way by this amendment. And so we do know in general that this amendment will change those laws to some extent in our state. We just don't know how deeply they will. But when you're looking at children's welfare in terms of their health care, their parenting, protection from people who would want to harm them, who are family members, we know that this amendment puts them in a vulnerable place.
Well, I think in terms of the domestic violence claims, I think I call this the Ohio factor, because that's always the case study that is brought up in this case. North Carolina has vastly different domestic violence laws than the state of Ohio. We have 6 qualifiers in our North Carolina state law, 50B and C. And one of the qualifiers, you only have to be a roommate. Marital status or a marital substitute status or blood relation is not even, that's not important enough to be, you can qualify under those stipulations, but it extends so far beyond that it also covers roommates. So these domestic violence claims are nothing more than a scare tactic. And I think it's also important to say that this will not affect child custody or visitation rights, and it will not affect current couples and the benefits that they receive. Just like that second sentence of the ballot language explained, it will not be pursuant to private contracts of private parties.
Public employees would not be protected, and there are 9 different municipalities around the state that offer domestic partner benefits to dozens of families at this point.
Sure.
And children in the households who would no longer qualify for those benefits when this passes.
That is incorrect. They will actually be able to make a choice as the municipality to offer those benefits to whomever they choose.
Actually, in every state with an amendment as broad as ours, the courts have found otherwise.
The state of Idaho actually has the exact same amendment language, word for word, and it has been on the ballot for 6 years with no repercussions, legally or otherwise.
Right, but Idaho has we don't have what's known as home rule in North Carolina. Our municipalities can't choose.
They will be able to make the choice to continue giving health care benefits to whomever they choose.
On that note, we need to take a break. Going to break. This note, a mother in Moore County faces charges for what she did and what she had her daughter do. Steal campaign signs asking people to vote against the amendment. Listen to her logic.
I didn't feel like I was stealing the sign at the time. I just looked at it as picking up trash off the side of the road.
Heidi Thompson and her 13-year-old daughter plucked the signs out of the ground in Pinehurst. She is now charged with removing 3 lawfully placed political signs and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Her daughter was not charged. The soundbite, though, says more than we can when it comes to people's attitudes about the amendment. We'll be right back.